February is a month of love and a month of fashion. There is no more apt manga to talk about other than Nana, the masterpiece by Ayazawa that seamlessly melds these two concepts. Love is a volatile force that attracts people together. The realistic depictions of love is what makes characters in Nana feel incredibly real. People are messy, and by extension, so is love. Love makes us hopeful, and we all know how dangerous hope can be. Today, we will be talking about how love and hope influenced and affected Nana and Hachi's life, and what their relationships say about love. Let's break down a little bit of my own philosophies and how I understand love. That's too long. And before you guys get all like, well, love can't be broken down so easily. Well, if that's true, then why is it on the whiteboard? Are you saying that the whiteboard is lying? Realistically, I just want to give us both a vocabulary that can help us discuss love as a concrete driving force in our lived reality. While love is like a black hole, we can't look into it and figure out what is going on. We can't break it up into smaller parts and see how those are bonded to each other. We can observe the effects of it to better understand it. Desire are the things that we want because of love that exists between us and another person. It is the imaginings of what we wish to do for and with the person we love. Or at least it should be. But you can be wrong in how you desire. I know that's a weird thing to say, but it'll be clearer as the video goes on. Desire exists at the intersection of love and relationships. Relationships are the action and commitment that we end up taking that is fueled by the desire and love we have. But not all love is created equal, and neither are desire and relationships for that matter. Nana teaches us that, and Nana shows us what happens when either desire or the capability for relationships is missing, but people try to make it work regardless. Hey, my name is Esper, and I talk about things to a depth nobody asked for, and for your Valentine's Day present, here is the most depressing video you're going to watch about love. Okay, not really, but maybe. There is a compelling force in Nana that I could only relate to the way that each character loved one another. Their interconnected web of platonic and romantic love made for extremely realistic characters. People who feel flawed and lovable in ways very unique to who they are and the trauma that they carry around with them. As much as we must not become the hurt in our past, there are still things we have to overcome, and Nana shows us what happens when our past catches up to us. Nana gives us two titular characters, Nana Asaki and Nana Komatsu, the latter being given the affectionate name Hachi, which is how I will be referring to her from here on out. By and large, the story revolves around these two and the relationships they have with each of the characters and their respective partners. They are quite complementary in who they are. Hachi's love is needy and immature, while Nana's love has an air of protectiveness and maturity about it. Nana, left behind by Ren, and Hachi, left behind by Shoji, find themselves on the same train to Tokyo, chasing things perhaps they didn't even know themselves. But through their actions, we learn about love, desire, and relationships. Hachi is the first person that we really get to know, and the first thing we really learn about her is that she's cheating with a married man, which honestly, not a glowing review for her. There is a hole that Hachi wants to fill in her life with love. There is a strong middle child syndrome present. She feels neglected by her family. She feels not good enough. And we see the root of these feelings in the way her mother reacts in near apathy to her basically leaving in the middle of the night with nothing but a note and ending up on the same train as Nana. I think this led Hachi to act in ways people expected her to for fear of rejection. She didn't correct the idealized versions of her from those people. She was hoping for acceptance, even one that is partly rooted in a lie. In some small ways, she resented the way that Nana viewed her as pure and how Nobu viewed her as the girl next door. She felt trapped by their perceptions, but she didn't do anything about it. She hid and hid herself from them until it became too much. These extenuating factors then also affected what sort of relationship Hachi wanted. Hachi, viewing herself as a slut and as someone empty on the inside and actively hiding those things from her friends, led her to seek out relationships where she felt like her perceived sluttiness and emptiness would be accepted. This lowered and lowered the bar of romance that she was willing to accept. Any acceptance, even one devoid of any affection, is what relationships ended up becoming for her. This is how Hachi ended up in the arms of Takumi, someone who is a known womanizer and doesn't value women and romantic relationships. Someone who also viewed himself as filthy, much in the same way that Hachi viewed herself as empty. They were two people who put romantic relationships on a pedestal. This was evident in their views. Hachi, who viewed Ren and Donna's love as the ultimate bond without really looking at it, and Takumi, who thought that to have sex with a person he loved, Reira, meant soiling her purity. This teaches us the danger of getting into relationships when you don't love yourself. I was watching this comedy special that I found on TikTok while I was browsing, and it's called Jigsaw by Daniel Sloss. And one of the lines that really stuck out to me was, "You don't love yourself, so you hired someone else to do it for you." I've always wondered how people ended up in these insane relationships, but when your standards are low and you're unable to love yourself, and the small amount of love someone can provide to the parts of yourself that you feel like are unlovable will still be a net gain. We're now going to talk about the wrong way to have desire in a relationship. Desire is generally a cause and effect of love. I say generally because there can be a disconnect to it. Desires can exist because of a relationship. This tends to be the healthier way, or there is a desire that exists that a person seeks to meet by getting into a relationship. Generally, if you have desires that aren't related directly to the person you're in a relationship with, those are things that could be met without their intervention, or there's trauma that you need to work through. Hachi had needs that she wanted to meet, which was acceptance, and she could have met that for herself. She would have been better off accepting herself first before she looked at a relationship to do it for her. Now, let's uncover Takumi's desires. Takumi desires sex and acceptance very much in the same way that Hachi does. His desires come before the person he's in a relationship with, which is what we have already established is not the healthiest way. I think Takumi growing up had a really hard time reconciling his sexual desire with the purity he associated with Reira. Rather than viewing sex as a form of intimacy, he viewed it as something dirty because he initially started using it to feel momentarily good with people who he neither found attractive nor respected. This is why his relationship, his expression of a relationship, is so far removed from his desire. He views his desire as filthy and something that he can never do with someone he truly loves. And I don't know, man, like I would say go to therapy, but it's like the 2000s. Is that even an option? But Takumi is so fucked up in this way. And I think part of it is how devoid of love and affection his childhood was. And this is why he can't meet his desires in a loving relationship. His expression of romance is something completely separate. We very clearly see this in the way that his expression of a relationship is making something for the other person, whether it's music for Reira or a life and a home for Hachi. His relationship is so far removed from what he desires from that person. I don't know if Takumi looks at this as a way that he should behave and this is how he really truly feels, or if these two things are really a part of him and he can't reconcile it. Takumi is a really interesting character, albeit, a horrible human being, garbage trash. And since this is what a relationship is to Takumi, realistically, this is very sweet. And honestly, Takumi would have been a great partner to Hachi if, he just worked through his trauma around intimacy. But instead he cheated. So garbage human trash. And honestly, I think that Hachi fed into Takumi a little bit. The two of them are a little bit destructive because her desire is to be accepted and to fix. And she looked at this fucking mess and was like, I can fix him. Girl, you can't. You can't fix him. But to her, that's really at the root of what a relationship is. She wants to save and be saved. People who have a savior complex kind of have this MO. She wants to save Takumi. She wants to fix him. She wants to see that he can maybe be a little bit better. Realistically, she also wants to provide. And I think to her a little bit that, she can provide something to Takumi that he doesn't already have, and that's an attractive thing for her. I think Takumi looks at Hachi and sees that he can provide her something, that he can acquire her, that he can make something with her. And this is kind of like a toxic feedback loop. The two of them, I don't want to say activates each other's attachment styles, but whatever, they activate each other's attachment styles. And you can really see the downsides of how Takumi does relationships with the way that he acts with Reira. But let's talk about this may be the only positive trait that Takumi has. One of Takumi's lines that almost becomes his slogan is, "Only I can create the music that sets the stage for the power and beauty of Reira's voice." His whole life centered around that beauty that depersonified Reira to him and turned her into an unreachable diva. I think, though, there's no question about whether Takumi loved Reira. He did. There is a genuineness to Takumi when he says he didn't make Trap Nest to make everyone around him miserable. He really truly believes that making something is an expression of love to the people he cares about. But here is the thing. When you hold up parts of them to such high regard that you actually forget about who it is that you are in love with, you get a situation like Reira. Reira is simply a person, but she could never feel like it while she was around Takumi. But she loved Takumi so much that she was willing to do whatever it took to be around him still, and he in turn with her. There is something to be said about the experience of being human and being human with each other. At a certain point, there has to be vulnerability introduced to these relationships, and I think that's where a lot of them failed. There wasn't any vulnerability that Takumi introduced to his relationship with Reira or to his relationship with Hachi, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And when you never put in the work to realize what a relationship actually is, you go on to hurt the people you love and the people around you. Before I keep going, I just want to address the elephant in the room about Takumi. Cheating, abuse, manipulation are all bad. Keep this in mind when I am talking about Takumi's behavior. But I won't really be bringing anything new to the conversation by talking more about it. What I really want to highlight above all is how Hachi rose and grew from it. I don't see this perspective brought up enough. I've had enough of viewing Hachi as just a victim. That is not what defines her, in my opinion. She has agency, and she utilizes and builds power for herself. She has spent a lot of the series up until this point immature, but she grew up very quickly when she found out that she was pregnant. While it doesn't make it any less true that Takumi manipulated her, she also made a conscious decision picking him over Nobu, something I honestly wish I can talk about, but I don't have time for it. I promised myself no hour-long video essays for a bit, and trust me, we would get there if we talked about their relationship in depth. So let's talk about Takumi and Hachi's relationship. Then we can go on to what went wrong with the two of them. Takumi at first viewed Hachi as just one of his hookups. He talked down about her to a group of people who really loved her. Takumi desired that acceptance that Hachi had, and I think he found himself latching onto it. I think this was the beginning of Takumi valuing Hachi in a real way, much in the same way that we give designer goods value by prestige and the name it carries. Hachi's worth was solidified to Takumi in witnessing the love that other people had for her when she was nowhere to be seen to defend herself. His desire to monopolize this value grew in the same way that he monopolized making music for Reira's voice. But here is the part that really convinces me that Takumi fell in love with Hachi, even in his own fucked up way. he started building something with her. We see a flashback that Takumi had gotten a girl pregnant before and took out a loan to get her an abortion. Takumi never even offered up that option to Hachi, and he started building her the life she wanted and could live comfortably in because he desired her. A facet of this is the control I think he wanted with Hachi, but this is also the manifestation of a relationship for him. And this is why Trap Nest exists. This is why Hachi and Takumi's house in Shirogane exists. And I think there also seems to be a strange understanding in Hachi that is both immature and beyond her years. She made this deal for herself knowing that she was taking financial security for all of the baggage that Takumi had. And I really want to give credit where credit is due. Hachi stands up for herself, and Takumi does eventually relent to her in the ways that she fights for her freedoms. I think we need to take a step back and realize that this manga comes from a different time. Believe it or not, 2000 was 2.5 decades ago, and not only are the kids born in 2000s able to drink, most of them are probably in the workforce in some way, shape, or form. And Hachi and most of the gang was born in the 80s. So if what I'm saying is true, that they actually loved each other, that Takumi was able to give her her freedoms and Hachi was able to fight for them and they were able to grow a little bit, what went wrong? The reason why we had a connection in the beginning is that I think the two of them love each other in their own ways, but not healthy ways. Hachi's love is centered on fixing and providing. She needs to feel needed, something that became quite evident when she was with Shoji and to a lesser degree Nobu. It's not quite as evident, but in her mind, she was providing for Nobu. I didn't intend to talk about this, but I guess I'm just a liar. Okay. Hachi cannot help herself but to provide for the people that she thinks are in need because she has a tiny bit of a savior complex. Just a little bit. Because she wanted those things from people and damn, she was in a position to give it now, so why wouldn't she? I think a lot of people really portray Hachi in this like kind of ditzy, victimized way, but I think people don't give Hachi enough credit. Hachi knew that Nobu was the right partner for her, but what Hachi wants to do for the people she loves and what a relationship is to her is providing. And in a certain degree fixing. When she became pregnant, when Hachi came to this crossroads in her life, the things she needed to do was provide for her child and pick between Nobu or Takumi. But what did Nobu need in that moment? Blast wasn't really established as a group yet. Hachi said this out loud. A baby would stand in the way of Nobu fulfilling his dreams. He might have to go and take his inheritance and go back and live the life that he didn't necessarily want. To her, her relationship with Nobu meant clearing a path for him to succeed with Blast, and that meant leaving him. And Takumi became the clear option because while he kind of sucked, she did love him because she had this urge to fix him, and he also solved the question of who was going to provide for her child and how she was going to be able to afford it. Nobu in that moment still looked at her too much like the girl next door. There was this desperation in that Nobu wanted her to lie. Nobu not trusting her in that moment was huge. It destabilized Hachi, who was already in a really vulnerable position. Nobu didn't help the situation at all. He crumbled. And to a certain degree, people who save also want to be saved. And when Takumi came prodding along and said, I'm going to make this easier for you, I'll provide child support or we could get married, she looked at those options and found that this is the best of both worlds. And what really solidified this for me was when Nobu and Yasu were talking about how Nobu viewed women and how his idealized view of women kept them from really being themselves around him. Don't get me wrong, Nobu, not nearly anywhere near as bad as Takumi. But there is a naivete to Nobu that I really could not excuse at that point. There comes a point where you need to be able to step up, and Nobu did not step up and did not have it in him to step up. And Yasu saw that in him very clearly, and he pointed out Nobu's tendencies to have this idealized view of women and how it pushes his relationships into this corner, and then a little bit harshly asked him why he thinks Hachi chose Takumi over him. She falls in love with broken people because she herself is broken. Her desire is to be understood, but her love pushes her toward those who she believes she can help. But this leads her into a place where she ends up with somebody like Takumi. Takumi desired Hachi to fulfill his sexual desires, but he didn't realize he loved her until it was far too late. And this is really where I wish I could just jump into the story and say, Hachi, you cannot fix him. But she knew that. We never really saw Hachi trying to get her needs met by Takumi. We see her disappointed, as anybody would be, but I think that this disappointment was about the life she chose in general and not Takumi, personally. So after this incredibly long digression, this is what went wrong. Neither Takumi nor Hachi desired each other anymore. And you might be saying, Esper, what the actual fuck are you talking about? But stay with me here. Hachi doesn't desire Takumi anymore because she grew out of her old desires to be accepted for all of her bad traits. As Hachi grew up, her desires grew with her. We can see this by the way that she took comfort in Nobu's presence in the chapters depicting the future. Her desires became peace and comfort with another person. Hachi once desired Takumi, but it was fleeting. All of her interactions with him were laced with self-hatred, and as she realized she had to grow, her self-hatred kind of vanished to give way to the things that she valued more, like taking care of her friends and building a life for her child. Takumi, on his end, desired sex and acceptance from Hachi, but he couldn't bridge his desire with his love and his expression of romance. He stopped desiring Hachi when he grew to love her, because desire was something that he viewed as filthy. That is why everything falls apart for him. He is unable to intimately connect in any real ways that would push their marriage forward. He confides in her simply because he's trying to keep that part of himself hidden from trappedness, not because he is seeking to get closer to Hachi. But Hachi views it as a small way she can show up in the relationship because she is still a fixer. In reality, this is demonstrably showing us Takumi's hierarchy. Takumi, despite their messed up relationship though, eventually grows to learn to respect Hachi in some regard. We see this in one of the future chapters that reveal their separation is him paying the price for putting trappedness first, and that he cannot ask more from Hachi when he didn't sow the foundations of a good relationship to begin with. Takumi grows, albeit too little, too late. I know this is going to be a hot take that's going to anger a lot of people, but I think part of the reason why Takumi started cheating on her is because, one, yes, he is a horrible, terrible human being, and that was his norm, but two, Hachi is someone he began to put on a pedestal. When he received love and understanding and intimacy from Hachi, he didn't know how to exist in that in a healthy way, so he kept pouring his life into trappedness and met his desires elsewhere. This might be cope, but I think there's something there in the melancholy of the realization from Takumi that he made his bed, and he now has to lie in it. Hachi and Takumi couldn't outrun their traumas, and neither were brave enough to face them to grow beyond them, and they fell into a cycle that harmed themselves and the people around them. Unfortunately, Ren and Nana are very much the same. Ren loves in a very stereotypically patriarchal way, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, surprisingly. I'm saying that to highlight how immature he is and how little he has thought about what a relationship should look like for him. He supported Nana financially by paying for the rent at their old apartment, even once he left. He had sex largely to experience intimacy and to communicate desire. And then, when the two of them were in a band together, music also served as a piece of intimacy between the two of them, which we'll talk about later to a greater degree because it is super, super important. Let's talk about these things and break them down, because on a surface level, it might sound like I'm making Ren out to be the bad guy, which I am not. I'm not. I actually really like Ren a lot. I feel like this is becoming a little bit of a trend in a lot of my videos where I go, hey, look at all the dumb shit this character does. Then I go, I love them. I think that just proves how much I actually do like these characters, because I see their flaws and I still love them. We're actually going to skip talking about Ren and Nana's desire and go straight into what a relationship is for both of them. Please fall. 1 second. It's like it never happened. That one fell. All right. So Ren has a very patriarchal view of relationships, very conventional, and he hasn't put a lot of thought in it. Nana, on the other hand, is very possessive, and they're both really selfish. And this applies to every relationship they have, not just romantic relationships. Ren has this line, which I think is one of his most self-aware lines in the manga, which he talks about wanting to still love the person. I don't know the exact quote, but wanting to still love the person even if they are not with them. And I think this is him being a little bit self-aware of how selfish he really truly is, especially about music. Because as we'll talk later on, Ren and his relationship with Trap Nest is one that is almost akin, and like, I know this is controversial, but akin to Takumi's relationship with Trap Nest. He and Nana have a separate relationship that they have to worry about. Nana, as a person, is very possessive with her love. She wants the person who is important to her to be only hers. And this isn't just romantic relationships. We see this in all of Blast and Hachi. She wants to keep the people that she loves close to her and only hers. And this is why her relationship with Hachi became very, very strained when she chose Takumi, which I wish I could talk about the queerness element between the two of these people, but that's a completely different video that is probably over an hour long. So anyway, we're talking about Nana and Ren. Ren has this air about him that he just hasn't fucking thought about relationships really at all. Ren kind of just defaulted to what society tells him he should be doing in a relationship. And not good. You should really think about what it is that you need before you get into a relationship, but that's not the way people looked at relationships back then, or even really now. It might seem at first glance that Nana is very selfish, but Ren left her. Before we get into it, before people get mad in the comments, Ren has every right to pursue Trap Nest and pursue his career and pursue music. However, when the two of them met up, he didn't have that sense of, hey, this is a bad idea, because he wanted to have his cake and eat it too. Was that inappropriate? Anyway, when he realized that it was too much work, he didn't want it anymore. And that's pretty much as selfish as it gets, because he started this new relationship with Nana and was kind of like, actually, you know what? We're getting ahead of ourselves. I'm going to talk about it later. And we're going to talk about how Ren handles it when he has to really think about what a relationship between him and Nana means. Let's focus on Ren. Ren's view of relationship is conventional and patriarchal. A lot of people may look at Ren paying for Ren as guilt or consolation, but I think that because Ren's love is immature, he deferred externally to what relationships and romance are. The easiest of which is a stereotypical patriarchal view of relationships where one person is the provider and the other maintains the home, and then they have kids. The thing is, though, that Ren didn't think about, him and Nana aren't conventional people with conventional lives. He was literally a rock star, and then she was a rock star. They're literally rock stars. They're ambitious, and they want their own piece of making music and having that music heard. While the conventional life may have been what Ren aspired to because he didn't know any better, there was no space for it. The space went away for Ren when Nana started to make her own money, when it became clear that she had her own ambitions, when domesticity disappeared from their lives because of tours and shows and interviews that they needed to go on. But in reality, it never actually really was there. Nana would have never become a housewife. The domesticity that they engaged in kept them together long enough because it served as a proxy for a relationship. This might be a hot take, but I would say that Ren and Nana were never in a relationship after they reunited when Nana moved to Tokyo. They were simply chasing what was and what could never be again, while lacking an idea of what they really want for each other and from each other. When people say love isn't enough, Ren is the first person I think of. There is no doubt in my mind that Ren and Nana love each other very much, but the two of them simply have no business being in a relationship at that point. To introduce a trope here, if you love them, let them go. They were positively destroying each other. It might be Nana that always talks about her pride, but Ren has it too, and it gets in the way of their relationship. Here is the hard and bitter truth. Love could not have saved their relationship. They desired each other. They felt a pull toward each other. But eventually, even that waned for Ren. Because the idea of being in a relationship is so starkly different from the reality of it for them. Ren and Nana tried to patch up what was left of what they had and pick up from where they left off, but their lives have thoroughly changed, and neither of them seemed to want to acknowledge this. And neither of them wanted to adjust their lives to what it is now. The reason why they failed to make it work this time around is because they were lying to themselves and maybe a little bit to each other. At a certain point, it feels like between Ren and Nana, they weren't chasing their love anymore. They weren't chasing their desires anymore. They were chasing the comfortability of what was in the past, because the reality of their situation at this point was really bad, because the two of them were being pulled at different angles and different sides by the life they're living. They're literally rock stars. So they sought comfort in what brought them comfort before. But that's not the way that it works. That's not the way that love works. That's not the way that relationship works. And they chipped away at what was left of what they had for each other for momentary comfort, and then built up resentment and built up this horrible thing that ate away at both of them, because the two of them couldn't face the fact that it was over. The reality of being in a relationship with each other was far gone, and the fantasy of it was just far too attractive, and the two of them succumbed to it. The truth is, here Ren experiences intimacy in a very different way from most people, but probably most heartbreaking of all is that he experiences intimacy in the same way as Nana, and only Nana realized it. I remember this line very starkly that Nana thought. She said something about her stomach hurting, maybe from the sochu that she drank, but also maybe from the pill that she forgot to take but she didn't need. It was a sad realization that she and Ren hadn't had sex, not because sex is the end-all be-all most important thing in a relationship, but because Nana was so resigned to the fate of her relationship with Ren. It was a clear signal to us that they had grown apart. Ren has a line like this too. Ren confessed to Hachi what his actual fears were. He feared a time that if he saw Nana then and there, it would be over. There comes a moment near the end of relationships that your body starts to feel it. Your body knows when it is done, maybe before you do. Ren loved and desired Nana, but he had a relationship with Trapness. He desired Trapness beyond any of the desire he had for Nana. The two of them tried all sorts of different ways to revive their relationship, but failed to take into account what their relationship really, truly was. So it is time to reveal what they truly desired. Music. It seems rather simple now, but music is the key piece to them. It is something that both of them truly love. The ultimate intimacy for them was making music together. This was the piece that needed to be present. I genuinely believe that Ren and Nana could have been penniless, living out of the back of a van and playing shows on the road at bars to a crowd of 10. And those two would have been happier than anything Stardom could have ever provided them as separate artists. When Nana confessed to Ren that this is what she wanted and Ren didn't reciprocate, that was the moment it was all over. Nana had realized what it meant to be in love with Ren and what it was that was breaking her heart and what it was that they needed. I understand that Ren cannot just up and quit his job, but in that moment, he didn't want to make music for Nana. That was when we knew another piece had fallen. Ren still loved Nana, but did not desire her or had a relationship with her. Unfortunately, love is powerful enough tether to keep people wanting and hoping, but that is by far the cruelest piece that love plays. I'm going to quote The Hunger Games because I think it said one of the best things about hope. It is the only thing stronger than fear. A little hope is effective. A lot of hope is dangerous. This was a quote by President Snow, and if you know Hunger Games, he's kind of the big bad. But I think this very quote is astute in the way that it sees into what hope does for humanity. Love gives a lot of hope. Love makes you feel like you can brave through it all. That's why we get sayings like, all you need is love. Sorry, Beatles, but you're fucking wrong! A lot of hope is dangerous. It destroyed Ren and Nana's relationship when the realistic option would have just been to recognize their lives have moved far, far away from each other. No amount of love, pretend, a legal document, or domesticity would fill the cavernous wound that the lack of making music for each other made. But I can't really fault them because no matter how smart, how logical, or how in charge you are, love is such a powerful driving force that only another emotion taking over will set you free. Fortunately, or unfortunately for some, love does not die with distance or with breakups. Love lives on, but the carcasses of desire and relationships you had with those people will continue to haunt you if you don't move on from them. These are powerful, life-changing forces that shouldn't be handled so callously. But we can't help it because love makes you a little bit stupid, because love makes you very hopeful. And that's what Nana teaches us about love.
I would have died with him. I wanted Ren. I wanted him so badly I couldn't control myself. It's been that way ever since that very first night.
It's okay, because there's love right here.
Are you serious?
If you enjoyed this video, consider supporting me on Patreon. If you want to support me in other ways, watch this next video here, or just subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.